欢迎收看新闻30分，我是主持人 Liz。首先，请看本周的新闻节目。
欢迎收看本周要闻。奥巴马日前签署行政命令，要求美国在2025年以前建造出世界上速度最快的电脑。据悉，超级计算机可以帮助制造核武器、设计航天发动机和生产特效药。而现在全球最快的超级计算机天河2号位于广州的中国国家计算机中心。美国能源巨头雪佛龙发布财报称，第二季度净利润锐减90%，下降至5.71亿美元，创13年新低。除油价下跌的原因之外，其业绩还受到一次性开支的拖累。雪佛龙对外表示，将裁员1500人，以削减成本，应对油价下跌。联邦政府正在打击长期以来饱受诟病的盈利高校，那些高校让学生背上沉重债务，却很少提供就业机会。据报道，仍在经营的全美最大盈利高校之一凤凰大学，成为政府打击欺诈行为的目标。联邦贸易委员会正在调查该校是否采取欺诈性推销手法。Taser 公司表示，在过去的1年中，共售出3万多个可穿戴摄像头，销售额同比增长154%。目前，包括芝加哥、洛杉矶、旧金山等全美多个大城市的执法部门为执勤警察配备了这种有130度广角镜头，能够安装在太阳镜、制服和头盔上的隐形设备，进而减少警方在处理问题上引发的不必要麻烦。
中国的股市总能给投资者带来意外的惊喜和悲伤。古人早就知道了，陆游为此写道：“山重水复疑无路，柳暗花明又一村。”想知道美国的投资公司是如何评价中国股市的吗？想知道专业投资顾问给中国股民的建议吗？请收看本周的高端访问。
近期以来，中国的股票投资市场出现了大幅的跌宕，众多的投资者面临了诸多的问题，想要得到解答。那么今天我们来到了位于芝加哥的怡安.翰威特投资顾问有限公司。作为世界上最大的投资顾问公司之一，怡安.翰威特每年大概控制的投资额是在4万亿美金左右。今天我们有幸请来了公司的合伙人约翰·汤普森先生，以及公司的投资政策顾问Amy小姐。Amy, would you please give us a very quick review about the market right now? So
Sure.
What do you think about it?
Sure. Well, thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate it. A quick overview of what happened over there. On June 12th, Shanghai Composite Index just reached a 7-year high, and then the market just tumbled 30% from that fresh peak. Before the government stepping with very dramatic measures trying to calm down the market, and it's really the worst of its own since 1992, and almost half of the listed companies trading got suspended at this moment. Don't just focus on the downside, don't get wrong there, because you need to look at the whole picture. Even after the sharp drop, the market has run up, has more than doubled since the beginning of 2014. This is not the kind of market index return you're going to find in any other major market. So this is very China market. This is a very special market.
Okay. So from U.S. Point of view, what do you think? What behind this volatility?
Yeah. There's several things behind this volatility. One of the things is the perceived notion that the Chinese economy is slowing down. That is tied a lot to commodity prices, because China is one of the biggest users, I should say, of commodities. That a lot of people see the price of commodities also it's affected by the slowdown in China. And even though China recently suggested that they have 7% GDP growth, that's actually slower than what it has been in the most recent past. So that's another perception that could be driving the market as well. The other perceived things that may be more minor that we've seen are things like margin lending. So a lot of people are borrowing to buy stocks in the Chinese market. So that perception, whether it's not necessarily the majority of the people in the stock market, that perception has also come to affect the volatility. And then finally, the government coming in to step into the market has made headlines. So that also affects market sentiment because people are seeing it in the headlines. I think it kind of propels that momentum of a slide in the marketplace.
Okay.
And I just add to what John said. Another factor that's contributing to the volatility is that, well, in China's stock market, they have a very unique trading rule. It's a 10% break. So whenever a stock reaches a 10% limit during the day, either up or down, then all orders to go in the same direction will be rejected, cannot be executed. So if a stock is down 10%, then no more sell orders can be accepted, and everyone has to wait for the second day. And then if the second day the stock goes open 10% down from the prior day's close, then nobody can sell again for a second day, and everybody has to wait for the third day. And then think about when the market is deleveraged and everyone is trying to sell, and this constraint on sell is just reinforcing the panic, and it's just creates this spiral downward move of the market. So that's also one of the contributing factor to the volatility.
Okay. So do you think this volatility is in a normal level? So how do you think the investor they're going to act about this?
Yeah, a lot of that depends on experience and whether or not you're a professional investor or more of an amateur investor, right? Amy and I being professionals, I would say we don't necessarily see this as any more volatile than the Chinese market has been in the previous 20 years. We do understand that markets go up and down and markets tend to recover, but this particular downturn isn't any worse than any other downturns we've seen in previous market troughs as well. So.
Yeah, even though this kind of volatility is not that abnormal for China's market, if you look at the entire history, however, I would say we need to look at this volatility in perspectives. So as we know, the China's economy is slowing down, and then the two growth engine like infrastructure and export really slowed down. There's lack of this economic power, and so many really doubt behind this run-up of the market since 2014 whether the economic conditions and business profitability can really support this run-up. And then if you look at the broad margin among retail investors and the high multiples in tech sector, it seems this correction is unavoidable. So this volatility doesn't surprise me. Well, however, the volatility did cost investors tons of money and the government trillions renminbi to save the market. And we need to keep the eyes on the market because we need to assess whether this market is going to actually have an impact on the real economy in China and then the global markets.
Okay, so from your point of view, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
After this, what's going to happen? I think a lot of readers, they want to know this.
Right.
Well, from the trough, the market has climbed about 5%, and just on this last Monday, the market just had a fresh 8% fall. Well, at this moment, the government has already poured in money worth of 10% of 2014's GDP, a lot of money. It's still early to assess whether all the measures have actually worked effectively. And then the market is not back to its normal condition yet if measured by the trading volume, and then nearly half of the listed companies cannot be traded yet. The trading was suspended. And then there's criticism that the Chinese government might have overreacted, or the helping hands is kind of actually encouraging the speculative behavior of retail investors, that they're going to be saved always. And then this is also a setback with the massive intervention of the government. This is a setback for the China's market in the process of integrating with the global market. And then I think the biggest concern is probably when and how the China's government fund is going to withdraw from the market without shaking the market further.
So everybody knows since the July, the Chinese government, they did a lot of things trying to calm down this volatility. So, can you comment on the market regulation?
Sure. There are several different regulatory forces, and I'll have Amy talk about the Chinese, but I think just to compare to Chinese market, most markets are regulated by the government, even though the Chinese government is in the limelight right now because of what it's doing. The SEC also has power to put halts on certain stocks as they trade in the market, and has done that in the past, so I think that should be pointed out. And then the other thing that we should point out that's maybe different than the Chinese market here as far as regulatory goes is FINRA. And FINRA is actually a self-regulatory agency because it's the industry's players who support FINRA, and so they regulate one another by supporting this organization, and they work alongside the SEC to help establish trading rules and halts, for example. And do you want to talk more about the Chinese regulatory market?
In this kind of crisis time, we see similar government actions. Like back in 2008, the U.S. government also stepped in and had a hold in the GM, and then it's no surprise that Chinese government is stepping in with very forceful and bold actions at this moment. If you look at the past 30 years, the eye-popping economic growth story of China, no one can really doubt the role Chinese government played. It has been very effective in directing its resources, policy, capitals in the direction that fits its long-term economic growth strategy. And then in the stock market, the government also has a huge stake through state-owned company, state-owned investment funds, and so on. And then the government set rules, changes rules, and then has a chest full of tools at disposal. So if the government wants to intervene, it really has a heavy hand on it. At this moment, I would say Chinese government has its own agenda. Like with the economic reform, the government encourages private banking and encourages business to raise capital from the marketplaces. That has caused the emerging internet financing and shadow banking. That really played a small but very impactful role behind the heavy leverage of retail investors. And then, like in the U.S., there are different government agencies to oversee the market. Like in China, there are separate government bodies to oversee the security market, the banks, insurance company, and then also the People's Bank of China set the monetary policy. And then, as I said, the problem with internet financing and shadow banking requires the coordination among all the government agencies. It's a new challenge along with this economic reform.
Okay. So, Amy and John, as an expert investor, so from your perspective, how do you think the Chinese market?
The Chinese market's very unique. We talked a lot about volatility, and it is more volatile than what you will find in the U.S. market, for example. One of the things that really sets the Chinese market apart is many of the larger companies are state-owned enterprises, which is very different from the U.S. market, where the government tries to stay away from being involved in the markets. So they want the individual participants or the market participants, basically the private industry, to participate in the stock market. Now, there are exceptions to the rules. In the 2008-2009 financial crisis, the government did take stakes in companies such as General Motors, like Amy spoke about earlier, but the government tries to get out of those positions as fast as they can, which is quite different than the Chinese government involved in their state-owned enterprises.
Well, as you mentioned this, that really brings out a picture in front of me, U.S. parents versus Chinese parents. I just wondered, John, when you turned 18, did your parents just kick you out?
Well, they didn't kick me out of the house, I'll say that, But one thing is that they did stress that I was independent at the age of 18 and that I had to take care of myself, and they did charge me rent to live at my parents' house after that age.
Wow, this would be unthinkable in China. Definitely different parenthood, and you see three generations living together, or at least parents will never say get out of the door, live on yourself. This is very different culture, and you do see this seem to be in the market as well. We do see very hand-holding of Chinese government in the stock market as well.
They just never want to let it go.
Don't fall. If you fall, I'm going to hold you up and lift you up. So other than the government side and then the market participants, I think we should also mention something really, really unique about the China's stock market. It's about the retail investors. The retail investors, the trading volume, daily trading volume, 70% of the daily trading volume is from the retail investors in China. Yes, they're active traders, and they like to take full discretion in their investment decisions, and this is very different from the U.S. You don't see daily traders among retail investors, and well, with the falling price of the real estate market, so there are very limited investment options for Chinese retail investors. So you see the investors constantly looking for hot spots, and they follow the herd and they chase the returns. They don't have, with the economic growth, the gap between the rich and poor is just getting wider and wider. So a lot of people don't have patience for long-term investment. They do see the stock market as a quick way to become rich, especially with a leverage. Leverage has been provided by the internet financing company as a very powerful but dangerous tool for those type of investors. So I think that's something very unique about the China's stock market, the participants, government stake in the market, and then the individual investors' behavior. Well, some people might say, well, Chinese investors are like gamblers. Well, to a certain extent, yes, they are taking the stock market as a casino. However, I think that it would be way too simple to phrase them as gamblers. Because on one hand, Chinese investors are very speculative and aggressive, and on the other hand, they're very conservative. So if you look at the saving rate of Chinese household at 49%, still rank the top of the world, compared to only 18% in the US. And then the total household wealth in the stock market, in China it's less than 10% versus 22% in the US. So they're playing with little part of their wealth in a very aggressive way.
Well, that's really so. For all those investors, so do you think they have to keep in mind because the culture difference for Chinese market and U.S. market, whatever they're going to do, they have to think about this part.
Yeah, it's always important to take into account the cultural differences when looking at different countries to invest in, right? That's very important. That being said, you should also look at each economy operates a little bit differently. We all have different banks, and these things can all be good because it provides diversification if you add these different types of cultures and different types of markets into a portfolio. So that helps with diversification. So even though things are maybe culturally different or have different return and risk patterns in each market, putting together those different things into a diverse mix of a portfolio is important for not just professional investors, but for all investors.
I see John is very mindful of the culture in China's stock market for today's interview. See, He's wearing a red tie.
That's a lucky color.
It's a lucky color
Yeah.
for the China stock market. Yes, that's one of the difference if you talk about culture.
Yes.
And red is a lucky color for China, and we love red color everywhere. So in the stock market, red is for stocks going up, and
Yes, yes.
green is for things going down. But it's quite the opposite here. We have green for stocks going up, and red is a bad day.
Right, yeah.
So John is really doing a great example to be mindful of the cultural difference here.
That's right.
So you've been to China.
I have been to China. Yeah, I've been to Shenzhen and I've been to Shanghai. So.
Okay, so at the end, what do you have any advice to our Chinese investor?
Sure.
Professional opinion.
I think that one of the main things is there is a lot of volatility today, but if you get caught up in the day-to-day of the markets, you're probably not going to perform well because you will get caught up in your emotions, and instead of being taking a more thoughtful, rational approach to investing, you're going to get caught up in the emotions and may end up losing more money than gaining. So we really stress the long term. Making sure you're diversified, like I spoke earlier, making sure you're spread across different economies so that when one thing's going down, the other thing is hopefully going up. So that long-term diversification is really what we would suggest. A lot of people ask, should we be in the Chinese market in the U.S.? It's good to diversify across all countries, we believe, because that global diversification is really going to help improve that return for risk ratio if you think more about that over time.
Yeah, well, our advice for investors in the U.S. going into China, because it's such a big market, the stock market is already the third largest right after NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. It's just too big to be ignored. And then as you go in there, you need to be mindful of the cultural difference, the regulations, and then stay flexible as the rules change very often along with the economic reform. At the same time, we know some of the audience are Chinese investors in China, and as they consider global diversification of their wealth, we would like to emphasize the benefit of long-term investment and diversification. As John just mentioned, this is something we always emphasize to our institutional pension and endowment foundation clients, long-term and diversification. And then as they come out of China, they need to be also mindful of the market's regulation are different, investment options are different, and they do need to stay long-term and have very sound asset allocation strategy in order to achieve the benefit of diversification outside of China. And then we talk so much about the difference between U.S. and China, but there's really one thing in common if you really look through it. It's the leverage and it's a deleverage. So the leverage is what happened in 2008 in the real estate market of U.S. And then the deleverage just let everything down. It's the same thing in China right now. It's a leverage in the security market, and then deleverage just drives the market down. And then ironically, both governments are doing very similar things. Stimulus, pumping money into the market. Well, we have a saying here, don't fight the Fed. You need to be aware of the monetary cycle of the Federal Reserve. Don't fight the Fed. And if you consider such a powerful role that the Chinese government plays in the market, then don't fight the government. The same wisdom applies there. So that would be our advice.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all we need to know right now. So thank you so much for your time.
Hi, this is Little Chinese Channel, 小小中文, Lesson 7. In this lesson, we will be teaching you these 6 Chinese characters. From our last lesson, we learned the character yo. If we add another yo to make them side by side, this character is shuang. Shuang means pair. 两双means two pairs. 双 is the building block of this character. If we remove one yo and add 3 strokes, like this, it is 皮 means skin. 皮肤 means skin. These two characters contain 皮. And we exchange those 2 strokes with a shorter stroke. This is 反 means opposite. 相反的 means opposite. And we change that stroke with a straight stroke. This turns into 友 means friend. 朋友 means friends. If we give that stroke a turn at the beginning, and put a dot, this is 发 means to send out. 发出 means to send out. Next, we'll learn a new root character. What's this? 匕 means dagger. 匕首 means dagger. It's time to write. Shuang means pair. Pi means skin. Fan means opposite. You means friend. Fa means to send out.